The chosen one.
We're in Toronto tonight for WCW Mayhem, a fitting name for this pay-per-view seeing as the company has indeed been in a state of mayhem quite recently. The date's November 21st, 1999, Mayhem's replaced WCW's annual World War III pay-per-view. The show's named after EA's WCW Mayhem video game, and we're going to crown a new World Heavyweight Champion tonight as a month-long tournament comes to an end during this show's main event. Jeff Jarrett, Chris Benoit, Bret, Hart and Sting have all made it to the semi-finals, and we'll see those semi-final matches tonight along with the final match. Halloween Havoc 99 was Vince Russo's first WCW pay-per-view. That show was absolute chaos from start to end, so let's see if there's an improvement tonight at Mayhem. 14,000 are in attendance, 200,000 bought the show on pay-per-view, and the show gets off to a great start with this fan right here giving us his honest opinion on WCW's commentary team. What a guy. The commentators remind us that we're going to see Goldberg versus Sid in an I Quit match along with David Flair versus Kimberly Page, two matches I can't wait to see, but we kick off the pay-per-view with the Jeff Jarrett versus Chris Benoit tournament semi-final match. The commentators say it's no coincidence that Jeff Jarrett's getting to wrestle his semi-final match right at the start of the show. The powers that be have anointed Jeff as the chosen one and they want to give him every advantage possible tonight. Benoit's wearing the maple leaf on his tights here at Mayhem, and he lights Jarrett up with a few chops after Double J tried to embarrass him with a few slaps. Chris delivers a tornado DDT, an inverted atomic drop and a neckbreaker. The Canadian crowd are going crazy for Benoit right now, and Jarrett falls victim to a superplex as Chris begins this match quite aggressively. We go to the outside where Benoit tries to keep his momentum up, but he gets his wee rabid Wolverine smashed into the ring post. This allows Jeff to take the driver's seat for a while as he delivers a power slam and a vertical suplex back inside the ropes. After a few pin attempts, the chosen one locks in a sleeper hold. A Benoit chant breaks out in the audience as Chris tries to fight his way out. Chris escapes and he applies a sleeper of his own, but Jarrett gets out with a jawbreaker. We see an uncharacteristic side slam backbreaker from Chris before Jeff finds himself taking a few consecutive German suplexes. And just as Double J kicks out of Chris's cover, we see Creative Control walking down the ringside. Brilliant. Jarrett drops Chris on the top rope as he looks for a count-out victory. Benoit gets back in the ring though and he rolls through after a Double J crossbody. Chris then counters a back suplex before signaling for the headbutt, and Chris is able to hit his finishing move. A member of Creative Control, either Gerald or Patrick, who knows, breaks the cover, and while Chris argues with the baldy bastard, the other one jumps in the ring to launch an attack. This allows Double J to perform the stroke, but Dustin Rhodes shows up and Jarrett's cover gets broken up. Dustin then fights with one of the Creative Control guys while the other grabs Double J's guitar, but Benoit manages to push Jarrett into the former backer Michael Liker, and it's Jeff who ends up taking a 6-string to the head. Benoit advances to the tournament finals after winning via pinfall, but he gets his ass kicked after the bout. Doug Dillinger has to run down with a bunch of boys to stop the beatdown, and Luke, this security guard here on the entranceway, thinks it's all a big joke. He's having the time of his life while laughing his ass off. Disco Inferno was getting interviewed backstage, and when Double J came through the curtain, he decided to attack the Cruiserweight Champion. A bunch of wrestlers and the Misfits had to pull Double J and Creative Control away from Disco. This isn't great for the Inferno either, because his match against Evan Karagias is up next. It looks like the champ's in no shape to compete, but Tony Marinara tells him to get out there and make some money. Disco's debt isn't going to pay itself, there's $25,000 up for grabs in this match, and so the bout takes place as scheduled. Evan comes to the ring with Medusa and two other huge newcomers to the WCW roster, and it was because of Medusa and Tony Marinara that Evan Karagias won the Cruiserweight belt. Tony got a little distracted by Medusa's enormous mama jammas and he wondered if he could use them as space hoppers after the show. Evan took this personally and he went out to confront Tony, but this allowed Disco to grab a chair. Disco then accidentally hit the man that he owes a lot of money to, and Disco was so distraught that he ended up losing the match following a springboard crossbody from Mr. Karagias. This wasn't a terrible match, and the opening match wasn't bad at all either. Some massive, and I mean massive, distractions were involved in the Cruiserweight title match, but all in all, it's a decent enough start to WCW Mayhem. A little later on, Disco tried to explain to Tony that the chair shot was an accident, and Tony said tomorrow night on Nitro, he's bringing the boys. Disco immediately panics while saying he's a dead man. Vince Russo tells Jeff Jarrett that he blew it, and if Double J wants to be the chosen one, he has to do something tonight to prove he's worthy, so you can expect some interference from old Slopnuts a little later on. Screaming Norman Smiley says he's ready to become the first ever hardcore champion tonight, but he shits himself after hearing some construction work going on in the backstage area. Looks like our man could do with some volume. Norman's facing complete Ted Brand Knobs next. Smiley's clearly taking extra precautions, and we get a look at the WCW Hardcore belt. From what I gathered, this was another belt made by J-Mar, however it was based on a fan-created design. WCW didn't get the rights to create replicas, and so the other version you see in WWE video games and whatnot's a totally different design that looks like dog shit. Norman screams as Brian goes to work using a trash can, but the Nasty Boy misses a splash from the top rope. This allows Norman to take the trash can and Knobs gets whacked. Smiley then uses his hockey stick to do a little more damage, but a hardcore wiggle from Scream and Norman doesn't go to plan. What a shame. Norman ends up on the outside where Jimmy Hart tries to give his boy a helping hand. Jimmy doesn't do a great job, but Norman still takes a trash can to the head. The competitors fight up the ramp. They go all the way up to the entranceway while Knobs hits Norman with a trash can lid, and the crowd boos as both men fight in the backstage area. Smiley gets sent through a table while Knobs gets sent into a PlayStation sign. Not a lot of impact here, unfortunately. They then go into the storeroom where the two fight amongst cardboard boxes, food items, and coffee cups. Jimmy Hart starts throwing random food items at Norman in an effort to slow him down. The match ends when Norman and Knobs go into an elevator. The door closes with Norman punching Knobs. When it opens again, Brian's on top of Norman and Jimmy Hart accidentally hits his boy with a trash can. It looked pretty terrible, to be honest, but this is enough to give Smiley the win, and therefore Screamin' Norman is the first ever hardcore champion. That Junkyard Invitational at Bash at the Beach and that trophy that clearly said hardcore champion doesn't count. Knobs attacks Norman and Jimmy Hart after the match, meaning the relationship between the Complete Tit and the Mouth of the South has perhaps come to an end. The beatdown stops with Norman and Jimmy getting laid out among a ton of delicious baked goods. The Revolution are talking about what ifs in the backstage area. What if Tori ends up in the ring in our next match with Saturn or Malenko? What if JFK wasn't assassinated? What if the dinosaurs were still alive? Saturn says the Revolution are going to make the filthy animals extinct just like they did with the dinosaurs. And even though man didn't exist when the dinosaurs did, all Perry's saying here is what if. A very out of place promo for Perry Saturn. The Revolution put Rey Mysterio out of commission on Nitro, but Saturn, Malenko and Asia are going to take on Eddie Guerrero, Billy Kidman and Tori Wilson. This one's an elimination match, and after taking care of Saturn and Malenko, the filthy animals show they have no issues going after Asia. The match then officially begins with Eddie Guerrero performing a backdrop on Stenko Malenko. The crowd are already chanting boring as the two men spill to the outside, which does make me wonder exactly what these fans wanted to see so early in the match. So Perry spices things up a bit with an Asai moonsault. Kidman then performs a springboard crossbody to the outside, and then, on the other side of the ring, a fan in the audience pokes Stain with his Canadian flag. The fan gets ejected from the arena, but you can tell this was a plant right away because the cameras remain focused on him as he leaves the venue. Back in the ring, Tori somehow injures her ankle as Perry Saturn was dragging her away from Asia. A concerned Eddie Guerrero goes to check on Tori, and Kidman seems to take exception to this. Eddie shoves Kidman away, Kidman then gets pinned, and that's Billy out of the match. Kidman and Eddie then shove each other around. The crowd chant for Eddie as Billy tries to figure out why his partner shoved him, but the match continues on and Kidman leaves the ring in a huff. Conan then speaks with Tori for a brief moment before he too heads back up the ramp, so Eddie and Tori are left all alone to deal with the whole revolution. Keep in mind that Shane Douglas is sitting on commentary. Asia delivers a vertical suplex to Eddie, but when Dino Machino gets in, Guerrero's able to score his first elimination after a Hurricane Rana, so Asia comes back in as the match goes to 2-on-2. Saturn ends up accidentally hitting Asia with a standing sidekick, and Eddie's able to toss Saturn out of the ring. This allows Guerrero to deliver his frog splash, and Asia's out of this elimination match. Saturn has to eliminate both Eddie and Tori if he wants to win this thing. He trades sleeper holds with Eddie and Guerrero's able to get the upper hand after breaking Saturn's sleeper with a back suplex. He then stops a springboard attack with a dropkick, but Saturn performs the Death Valley driver and Eddie's in a lot of trouble. He does kick out of the follow-up cover and he dodges an elbow drop, but when he crawls to his corner, he remembers he can't really tag in Tori right now, so he continues the match in hopes of putting Saturn out. Guerrero gets eliminated when Saturn rolls through from a crossbody. Eddie taps out of the rings of Saturn, and so Tori has to fight Perry one-on-one. Saturn stops Tori from leaving the ring. The fans think Tori's done for, but she delivers a low blow and now Saturn's in a lot of trouble. So much trouble that Shane Douglas has to jump on the apron to distract the referee, and this allows Saturn to repay the favour, as in he delivers a low blow to Tori. Chyna no-sold the low blow at Survivor Series, but Miss Wilson does not, and Perry Saturn ends up winning the match by pinning Tori in the middle of the ring. You know, I didn't hate this match. Again, it had quite a lot of distractions and little things going on, but it wasn't boring to sit through. Mayhem's been alright so far, for 1999 WCW standards anyway, so yeah, not bad at all. Jeff Jarrett and Creative Control are seen attacking Buff Bagwell in the locker room. Bagwell's scheduled to face Curt Hennig next in a retirement match, but after Curt makes his entrance, the three amigos make their way down to the ring and they give Curt a beating too. Bagwell runs down with a 2x4 to make the save, and the match gets underway when the bad guys leave. Curt showed his appreciation by blindsiding Buff Daddy. So the powers that be told Curt a few weeks ago that he'll be fired if he gets pinned or if he submits in any future WCW matches. They also don't like Buff Bagwell, so they said he'd get sent home too if he can't beat Curt tonight. So one of these boys will be leaving WCW after this match, apparently. I mean, don't bet money on it or anything. Hennig took control when the match went to the outside, and when Bagwell tried to fight back, he ended up taking a low blow. But Buff completely no-sold it and he snapped Curt's neck over the top rope. Tori Wilson could not withstand a low blow, but Bagwell brushes it off like it's nothing. Back in the ring, Curt delivers a leg drop that hits a little low. He then applies a sleeper hold, and yes, we've seen quite a lot of sleepers on this show already, haven't we? Buff breaks free, and so Curt uses Bagwell's chain to choke him out a little, and sleeper hold number 2 gets applied as Buff starts to fade away. This match has not been good so far, and it gets even worse as we approach the final moments. Bagwell performs a body slam before taunting his opponent. Curt tries to dodge a splash, but he doesn't move quick enough, allowing Buff to hit him with a weak punch. Hennig then launches Buff into the corner, but Bagwell gets a boot up, and that's it. After months of build-up, and after Curt scraping by week after week to keep his job, he loses clean to the Buff Bagwell blockbuster, and Curt Hennig must now retire. Bagwell leaves the ring and the crowd give Curt a standing ovation. The commentators reiterate that Curt has to hang up his boots now, and the crowd giving Curt this ovation would have been a nice little moment if Curt wasn't back in the ring in a few weeks' time. A shit match right here though, the worst on the card so far. If it wasn't for the powers that be stripping Sting of the WCW Championship after Halloween Havoc, then there wouldn't have been a title tournament concluding tonight at Mayhem. Sting says he shouldn't have to regain what he didn't lose, and Sting says he's fully aware that Bret Hart's on home turf tonight, but it's still showtime. Sting's going to eliminate Bret in our second semi-final match, and the Hitman comes to the ring to a thunderous ovation. The Toronto fans love their Canadian hero, but he's got a tough task ahead of him tonight at Mayhem. The Stinger makes his entrance, the bell rings. It's a cagey start here with both men being cautious, and things get a little tense when Sting shoves Bret from the corner. The two square up to each other before the shoving continues, and all I can think about here is what if? What if these two had a main event match immediately after Bret debuted? What if Bret was immediately put into the Sting vs Hogan storyline following Starrcade 97? What if the dinosaurs were still alive? Sting completely understands his role tonight inside the Air Canada Centre. He bumps around the ring for Bret as the Hitman lays in a few shots. Bret continues his onslaught on the outside, and when we get back in the ring, Hart delivers his signature headbutt to the midsection. I can't remember the last time Sting got wrecked so early in a wrestling match. The Icon fights back with two very deliberate eye rakes, and for the first time since his heel turn, Sting gets booed after putting Bret on the mat. It says a lot in regards to how much the Canadian fans love Bret Hart. The Hitman fights back with a suplex. Sting continues to cheat by delivering a low blow. Sting then hits an elbow drop, and there it is, a sleeper hold. As we head into the year 2000, sleepers are becoming the new chin locks. Bret gets out, he takes a knee to the midsection, Sting brings his excellency to the outside and the Hitman gets wrecked at the commentary table. Sting then goes for a Stinger splash when Bret's let out, but the move doesn't connect, yet Sting remains in control after throwing Hart into the guardrail. Back in the ring, Bret gets a boot up in the corner, and look at this, the most blatant of referee bumps you'll ever see. Bret had the opportunity to not knock Mickey J into next week, but he decided, fuck it, you're going down, pal. Lex Luger and Miss Elizabeth run down. The total package has a baseball bat. He looks at Bret, but he decides to hit his old friend Sting. But Bret takes the bat away and he gives Lex a taste of his own medicine. Lex gets put in a sharpshooter as the referee wakes up, and Mickey J disqualifies Sting for some unknown reason. I guess because Bret had Lex in the sharpshooter, the referee thought Luger was trying to interfere on Sting's behalf. Bret isn't standing for it, he tells the referee that the match can't end like this, so the Hitman requests a restart and the referee allows it. The bell rings again, the match continues on, and Bobby Heenan says Bret may have made the biggest mistake of his life right here. Hart stays on Sting with a Russian leg sweep and a backbreaker. He gets a boot in the face when coming off the top rope though, and this allows Sting to apply the Scorpion Deathlock. Bret counters the move by pummeling Sting's knee, and Bret's able to lock in the sharpshooter, and Sting has no choice but to tap out. Bret's going to meet Chris Benoit in an all-Canadian tournament final, and while it wasn't brilliant or anything, this match was better than Bret vs Sting at Halloween Havoc 98. Sting completes his face turn by calling Bret back into the ring to shake his hand. A great little moment here from two of the absolute best to ever do it. And Chris Benoit then gets interviewed backstage. He says the last time he fought Bret, it was in honour of Owen Hart. Tonight is for the recognition of being the top man in the sport of wrestling. Lex Luger, meanwhile, is already wearing a cervical collar while saying he can't compete in his match tonight. He's going to personally refund every single person who came out to see the total package wrestle at Mayhem, so that means he'll be reimbursing approximately 4 people. Oklahoma and Steve Williams come out to watch our next match, a dog collar match between Vampiro and Berlyn. As we have learned through this Reliving the War journey, there's been many things that have been greatly exaggerated through retellings of the Monday Night War, but what everyone says about the Oklahoma character is 100% true. Making fun of someone's very real and very serious health condition is really low. And you know, I do enjoy laughing at dumb shit during wrestling shows, but this is even low for my terrible standards. It's just not funny and it's kinda pathetic. Oklahoma provides commentary for this one and it sucked. No point going into detail. Berlyn didn't put the dog collar on and instead he let his bodyguard, who's now named The Wall, to beat the crap out of Vampiro for the majority of the bout. Wall then put the dog collar on and the commentators didn't try to explain what was going on. Instead, Oklahoma shouted Vampiro over and over again while imitating Jim Ross. Wall goes to cover Vampiro as we all assume Berlyn's not going to officially compete in this match, but then Das Wunderkind pulls his bodyguard off Vampiro as if to say, hey, what are you doing? This happens twice and the Wall decides to throw the collar at Berlyn, so it looks like the relationship between Alex Wright and his bodyguard has completely broken down tonight at Mayhem. It's kinda stupid seeing as Alex was the one who told the Wall to take his place just a minute earlier. With no bodyguard, Berlyn ends up losing the match. Vampiro and Jerry Only double team the Big Bratwurst and Alex gives up after getting choked out. Steve Williams then gets in the ring to beat up Vampiro and his misfit friend, and it ends with an Oklahoma Stampede to Jerry Only and a gut-wrench powerbomb to Vampiro. The following match wasn't great either, but before we get into that, we learned that Scott Hall's been handed the TV title due to Rick Steiner getting injured. Scott's now a double champion, but he says he'll give the fans what they want by defending both belts tonight at Mayhem. He issues an open challenge to anyone in the back, and we'll be seeing who Scott's opponent is in just a moment. We then see Curt Hennig leaving the arena while Kimberly Page arrives to the arena. Kim vs David Flair has much of the year potential and honestly, I can't wait to see what happens. The powers that be have told Lex Luger to stop being a little bitch. He must wrestle his match tonight against Meng, but Luger's going to spend most of the bout hamming up his obviously fake neck injury. The Menger beats the crap out of Lex, and when Luger performs a vertical suplex, Meng totally no-sells it. This is a man who can't be hurt. The total package gets totally wrecked on the outside while Meng continues to no-sell when the match returns to the ring. But Meng has a problem. He can't apply the Tongan death grip while Lex has that neck brace on. Another problem Meng has is one many people suffered from during this era. He seems attracted and distracted by Miss Elizabeth. And while this allows Luger to take advantage for a brief moment, he really can't do much to hurt his opponent. His power slam looked absolutely shit. His strikes in the corner do no damage at all. So Meng decides to hurt himself because God knows someone has to do it. The crowd's absolutely dead here as Meng lays in a few headbutts. He then brings Luger to the ropes where Liz is supposed to accidentally spray Lex with some mace. But it takes her a lifetime to get the lid off and the spot gets completely ruined. She also looked directly at Luger twice before spraying him. Meng removes the neck brace, he applies the Tongan death grip, the total package loses this match via pinfall, and yeah, we're going downhill here, aren't we? Bret Hart's backstage and he says neither he nor Chris Benoit are going to disappoint the fans in Toronto tonight. This is Bret's big moment, and even though he's friends with Chris, he will leave Mayhem tonight as the new World Heavyweight Champion. Lex Luger walked into frame during this interview looking for his woman. And speaking of women, David Flair's backstage polishing his crowbar. That sounds like a bad euphemism, but he really was shining his crowbar. We're going to find out who's going to face Scott Hall for the US and TV titles tonight at Mayhem, and yeah, it's Booker T, no point keeping you in suspense. Scott says Kevin Nash isn't here yet, but he will show up a little later on. So Big Sexy's either going to interfere in this match, or he'll get involved in another match a little later, I presume. Loads of time wasting at the start of this one, but the crowd eats it up. When the two finally lock up, it's Scott Hall in the driver's seat, and he takes great delight in slapping Booker around. Booker fires back immediately after a hook kick, but the crowd are definitely behind Scott tonight. Booker gets booed after this move. Booker performs a sidewalk slam, he then knocks Scott out of the ring after a forearm. When Hall gets back inside the ropes, he delivers a choke slam, and then we see the fallaway slam. Will we see a sleeper hold in this match? Yes we will. And when Scott applies the hold, we see Jeff Jarrett and Creative Control making their way down to the ring. Booker escapes and he pulls off the axe kick, a spinner Rooney, and the Harlem sidekick, but Creative Control get in the ring while Double J distracts Nick Patrick. Remember, Booker was pissed off that the powers that be suspended his brother, and that's why Creative Control are launching this attack. The bald bastards get wiped out, but Booker jaw-jacks Double J. This allows Scott to walk over and perform the Outsider's Edge, and the bad guy retains both his championship belts. After the bout, Double J and Creative Control attack Booker. The lights then go out in the arena, the clock strikes as the bell chimes, and when the lights come back on, Midnight's in the ring. She launches an attack on the heels. Booker and Midnight take Creative Control and Double J out. The overall match quality here and the way it played out was like something we'd see on Thunder or Nitro, although Midnight did look pretty impressive for the brief time she was in the ring.
Half crowbar will travel.
Here thinking you are someone, but David Flair, you could have had it all, but the unfortunate truth is you suck big balls.
Kimberly Page was driving very safely when that no good jaywalking David Flair stepped in front of her vehicle. Ever since then, Davey Boy Flair's gone loco and he spent the last 2 weeks stalking Kimberly all around arenas on Nitro and Thunder. The powers that be decided to book him in a match against David because those boys know how to book great wrestling matches. And so tonight we're going to see an all-time classic, Kimberly Page versus David Flair, the blind leading the blind. This all started because David attacked Kimberly's husband with his crowbar, so he's no one to blame but himself. The two make their entrances. Kimberly's looking great tonight. David gets told to put his crowbar down and Kim distracts her opponent by doing some stretches. It doesn't seem to work, which is very confusing to say the least. David gets kicked in the balls, and I honestly thought he was selling it the way he sells everything else, like absolute shit. But when David went back to his corner and he started punching his own dick, we all quickly realised that Davey's wearing a cup. Only David Flair would go one-on-one with Kimberly Page while protecting his wee Willie. Nick Patrick gets smacked with David's crowbar and David threatens to smash Kimberly's skull in. And you know how Kim breaks the psychotic episode that David's been going through for weeks? You know how she fixes something that therapy and drugs couldn't fix? By trying to seduce David once again. Yeah, and that stupid bastard falls for it. Kim pulls out David's cup, she hits him with it, and David's all dazed and confused. Young Flair then gets a proper kick in the balls, and Kim then kicks David in the head. Yo David, you're holding a fucking crowbar, mangle her face instead of standing there doing nothing, you dickhead. It gets better. Kimberly shoves the cup in David's face, so David inhales his own smeggy bald scent along with choking on his own pubes. He then gets slapped around by Kim, and I'm sure a lot of you fine gentlemen would pay for such an experience, but right here David's not having a good time. David shoves Kim away, he then grabs his crowbar. He approaches his opponent like Frankenstein's monster, but here comes a returning Chris Kanyon to save the day, thank God. Kanyon beats Flair up, David takes a Russian leg sweep and a Samoan drop. Diamond Dallas Page then walks down, and as David hits a low blow on Chris, DDP launches an attack on Flair Jr. This would have been cool if David wasn't so desperately awkward. Page delivers a diamond cutter, and to be fair to Flair, David does take it well. Page is just about to wreck David with his own crowbar, but here comes Arn Anderson to stop the beatdown. Anderson wants to protect David, and he wants this to come to an end, so Dallas eventually leaves along with Kimberly, and that's our match over. It's a no contest. Arn makes the stupid mistake of handing the crowbar back to David, and Arn gets smacked from behind. Flair's completely lost it again, and after this attack, he runs away through the audience. If you thought this couldn't get any worse, Doug Dillinger then shows up to help the enforcer, so Anderson's now proper fucked. He won't make it out of the arena alive. EMTs come down, they put Anderson on a stretcher, and it all ends with Arn having this incredible look on his face. Told ya, an absolute classic right here at Mayhem, worth the price of admission alone. Sid Vicious says the idea of him saying "I quit" to Bill Goldberg is ridiculous, it's inconceivable. Goldberg may have gave Sid the fight of his life at Halloween Havoc, but according to Sid, Goldberg did say "I quit" during that match, and he's going to do it again tonight. These two had what I thought was a decent match at Halloween Havoc. They played up to their strong points, or lack thereof, so I'm foolishly going into this one with high expectations. The two make their way to the ring. Goldberg gets cabbaged after inhaling a serious amount of pyro smoke. The fight begins before Goldberg can even get inside the ropes, but he quickly pulls off his signature power slam. Goldberg beats the crap out of Sid on the outside, but the big man gets the upper hand by getting back inside the ropes before his opponent. Sid pulls off a Cobra Clutch slam that looked great, followed by a big clothesline, and Sid tries to make Goldberg give up by clawing at his face. Goldberg gets choked out in the corner. It's not looking good for Billy Boy right now. Sid then performs a choke slam, but Goldberg won't give up. So Sid hits a second choke slam, but again Goldberg won't quit. The crowd are cheering for Sid here, and they boo Goldberg when he traps Sid in a head scissors before applying a cross arm breaker. A loud Goldberg sucks chant breaks out, and this is a first in WCW. You Canadian fans sure do like to make things interesting, and even Goldberg has to acknowledge it after performing a few clotheslines. Unfamiliar territory right here for Billy Boy. That's the end of our match, folks. Sid gets pummeled in the corner, Goldberg then applies a bridging Cobra Clutch, and Sid passes out. It's insane that this is all it took to put down the unstoppable Sid Vicious. At Halloween Havoc, he had to get beaten down to a bloody pulp, but here Goldberg made it look way too easy. The boos get really loud inside the arena as Goldberg gets announced the winner after Sid passed out. And yeah, a real disappointment here. This should have been an all-out war featuring two of WCW's biggest and baddest superstars. Before our main event, Lex Luger sends a warning to Miss Elizabeth. Liz is hiding from Lex, and that means she knows she screwed up tonight. So Luger tells Mean Gene to send Elizabeth a message. She better watch her back tomorrow night on Nitro. What an asshole. So here we go, the WCW World Title Tournament comes to an end. Bret Hart vs Chris Benoit, a main event we couldn't really envision happening inside a WCW ring just a few short months ago. To their credit, the company do a fantastic job here of making the match seem like a big deal. They show Benoit and Bret walking to the curtain before making their entrances, and they then show good arena shots just before the two square off. This is one crowd-pleasing matchup right here for the fans in Toronto, no matter who wins. So we've got a great atmosphere for this main event, not like previous WCW pay-per-views where the fans are burnt out by this point of the show. These two also had a fantastic match on Nitro in memory of Bret's brother Owen, so again, expectations are high. The referee has to force a break in the corner at the opening bell. Benoit shows his speed off by pulling off a quick arm drag. Bret again brings it to the corner, though this time he gives a clean break, and a test of strength ends with Bret working over the wrist and shoulder. It then goes to the mat as Tony Schiavone makes mention of the Owen Hart tribute match from Nitro, and when the two get to their feet, Bret takes a knee to the midsection, twice. Benoit's been busted open already, so he does what any man would do when seeing their own blood. He applies a chin lock. Bret tries to pin Chris while the chin lock's applied just because he's the excellence of execution, but his plan doesn't work. He does get a chance to lock in a sharpshooter though after reversing a sunset flip. Chris counters the sharpshooter attempt with a crippler crossface, but Bret's too close to the ropes. The two men stand up, they look at each other, and they shake hands. It's so fucking refreshing to see a WCW main event that's centered around what happens in the ring, but it is early days yet. There's no way this one isn't going to have some sort of interference. The interference occurs about a minute after the handshake. That fan who tried to attack Dean Malenko jumps the guardrail to attack Benoit, only it's actually Dino Machino himself wearing the face paint. Dean spits on the Canadian flag while attacking Chris, so Bret comes out to defend Canada's honour while helping out his opponent. The interference gets no reaction, and as the match resumes in the ring, the fans act like it never happened. We see a sweet piledriver from Bret before he tries to attack Chris in the corner. Benoit comes back with a few hard chops and Bret gets put on the floor. Backdrop from Benoit, back suplex from Benoit. The Hitman replies with a DDT, but Chris answers with a tombstone piledriver. Benoit then signals for the diving headbutt, and there it is. This could be it all over, but we've got more interference as the outsiders show up. They take way too much time coming to the ring though, and Skull pulls the referee out way too late. Bret has to kick out of Benoit's cover. Hall puts Benoit down with a fallaway slam, and just as Nash is about to hit Bret with a chair, Goldberg appears and Big Sexy gets speared. Bret then takes care of Scott Hall and the bad guy gets beaten up inside and outside the ring. So the outsiders decide to leave and they walk back up the ramp with their tail between their legs. What you need to keep in mind for the future though is that the outsiders stop Benoit from winning the match. That's all that matters. Goldberg fights with the outsiders by the entranceway before security rush down to break things up. The fight continues in the backstage area as Benoit goes back in the driver's seat inside the ring. Chris is now focusing on Bret's leg, and Benoit tries to make Hart give up to the figure 4. Bret makes it to the ropes, and this allows Bret to once again control the match. The Hitman performs a superplex. He follows this up with a Russian leg sweep. Benoit ends up on the outside where he gets a tasty drink thrown all over him, but he counters Bret's suplex and we see the German suplexes. He tries a dragon suplex that Bret counters, but Benoit goes under the arm and Bret gets trapped. Chris goes for the crossface, but he struggles to lock it in, and Bret's able to get to his feet. A quick wrist lock leads to Bret taking Chris off his feet, and Bret applies the sharpshooter. A tremendous sequence of moves and counters here, and it all ends with Chris Benoit giving up. Bret Hart has finally done it. He's won the WCW Championship after spending nearly 2 years in the company. Some may say it is too little too late, and Bret's now in a tough position of leading a failing company, but it's still a huge accomplishment and it's good to see him finally win WCW's biggest prize. It was also good at the time that someone like Chris Benoit got a main event opportunity. I know talking like this is always touchy for some people, but Chris was always in the mid-card to upper mid-card section, and it seemed like guys in that same tier would never get shots like this. So fair play to Vince Russo. I know it won't be popular, but he done a good job of shifting the main event picture right here. Bret celebrates with his family in the ring, he and Benoit show each other respect, and now we gotta wait and see what's next for Bret Hart tomorrow night on Nitro. Now, as much as I think Russo did a good job with the main event, there was a lot of nonsense on this show too. It started off well, the opener was good, the Revolution vs Filthy Animals match wasn't bad. I also enjoyed Sting vs Bret just because it was better than their previous pay-per-view match, but there was also some real low points on this show. It was leagues better than Halloween Havoc, except for that Goldberg match, but there were some other bad matches here too, including Bagwell vs Hennig and Berlyn vs Vampiro. The thing is, the bar's been set pretty low for WCW pay-per-views, and just seeing something semi-decent makes you think it's better than what it actually is. But I like to take these small victories where I can with WCW right now. I like the feeling of not wasting an afternoon watching, studying and scripting out something that WCW produced. So yeah, I thought it was okay, but your mileage may vary. When you've been on this journey and you're rewatching years of pay-per-views in chronological order, you definitely get a different outlook as opposed to picking a random show and shitting all over it on the internet. Check out the tournament matches for sure. Watch Kimberly vs David Flair if you want to laugh. The rest of the show does give you good insight into what WCW was like during this era while not hampering you down with a million cutaways and backstage promos. So it's a decent little sampler if you really want to experience the rough days of World Championship Wrestling. Thanks for watching, Soldier, and I'll see you next week for Reliving the War. Please take care.